Wham versus Baltune. An interesting series leader, one that I think could be a lot closer than people are expecting.
Yeah, this is also one of those rare matchups that barely ever happen. In fact, they have only played 2 sets against each other in the history of competitive AOE 4. One of them was a smaller tournament back in 2023. The only time that they have played against each other in a major tournament was the Elite Classic 2, just about a month and a half ago. That time, Baltune was able to take a game off of Wham, so the final scoreline was a 2-1. So as you kind of highlighted, this is kind of an unexplored matchup, and it's definitely one where there is a lot of upset potential in Baltune, especially because one of the key things to look at is how players' play styles match up against each other. And when you don't have historical data about the specific matchup between two players, it's always hard to predict how their matchups will play out against each other.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is, like, I think Baltune just had some sick players. I think one thing that really sticks to me is his utilization of walls as an aggressive tool. He's on top of his game there, like the gating, the back and forth pivot plays. Like, if you go a little bit too hard in melees, he's one of the best players exploiting that against you. Cool draft we've got coming through the map draft by Shark. We've got Four Lakes making a recurring appearance here. Woodwall's coming back again potentially. Love moving out, returning. That's gonna be exciting. Baltune's got a really intriguing draft as well, especially the Ottoman pick in particular. I'm curious as what that is about. I imagine that's for something on Woodwall. Something that has been starting to appear and crop up is actually these trade builds with the Ottomans, where they go for the trade land market tier 2 for a fast castle play later. And I think the best map for that would most definitely be Woodwall here. Hmm.
Well, a lot of water on these maps, but folks, don't get deceived. Coastal Cliffs, the icon shows a lot of water, but that's inaccessible.
Huh?
That's basically a Dry Arabia mini version that we're going to open with. Ayubits versus Jean d'Arc for game number 1. That's going to be the neutral map played from the open map category. Once again, let's take a quick look at the map categories, though, because one of the unique elements of this tournament, KP, is the fact that one of the players will pick the category that's coming up next, and the other player is going to pick the map from within that category. And here you see the highlighted maps that we'll be playing from each of these categories.
Have you noticed, like, nobody wants to pick King of Hill? Like, I don't think I've seen
You
a
had a King of the
single
Hill
draft.
game yesterday, KP.
Oh, I must have missed that one. So, okay, it got a little bit of pickings. Yeah, but most players have actually been avoiding it. I'm a little bit surprised how often Woodwall in particular is coming up. I'm not gonna lie, I'm just not a fan of Hillendale. Like, I saw a few games that. It's like I feel like I've seen all the games of Hillendale that I need to see for the year. So I'm glad whenever not picking that. Coastal Cliffs, though, man, I love that this is becoming kind of a recurring theme. I think it's an incredible map. I'm gonna have to see if Baltune can pull off an incredible feat, because as it stands at the time of recording, this matchup heavily waves in favor of Zhone. Let's see if Baltune can provide an upset against a favored player here in the form of Wham.
This is Group D here from the Master of Realms, round number 1. We have Luciferon, Baltune, Wham, and CSO in Group D here. We already have witnessed the battle between Luciferon and CSO. That's what we opened the day with. And here we are in the second matchup of the opening round. And KP, we touched on this in the pregame. These two have barely played against each other in a competitive environment. So this matchup between these two players is very much unexplored.
Yeah, Baltune feels like a little bit of a late bloomer, right? Like, always kind of there, lingering on the edge. We talked about in the past at a few tournaments, very much a team player, actually thrives in those team game tournaments, comes with some heritage, actually an Age of Empires 1 pro player. But the first few months of this year, man, he's been on fire. Like, his rise to the top of the ladders and his sustained presence there has been something to marvel at. In fact, he's even going to be seen at a LAN a little bit later this year. On the other side, Wham, definitely no stranger to the limelight, right? Like, I think, in some ways, I think Wham has kind of just been given the dimmer light of the Canadian bros, and I don't think that's fair. I think, Puppy Paw has maybe had the limelight on the bigger stage this year, the last EGC tournament, but Wham has been no pushover, and actually has been sneaking in some fantastic results in the just below S tier events. So I'd actually say Wham and Puppy Paw are almost on par at this stage.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. I feel like there are tournaments where Wham is performing better than Puppy Paw, and then you have tournaments where it's vice versa. It's very difficult to really tell, hey, this player is better than the other. It's actually very similar to the Spanish Brothers, by the way. I feel like when you average their performance out over a year or so, it pretty much comes out to be fairly even.
Yeah.
But one thing is sure, both the Spanish brothers and, of course, Wham and Puppy Paw are pretty much top 8 players that we're looking at. And I think that's one of the coolest storylines for Wham and Puppy Paw. Just, again, pulling a comparison between them and the Spanish brothers, Vortex and Luciferon came in as elite esports players into AOE 4, whereas Wham and Puppy Paw went from being totally unknown into some of the best players of AOE 4.
Yeah, I think really the big difference maker that put them ahead of the brothers is the Canadian punching bag. Like, big shout out to Magic, man. Like, this guy still grinds with them. He still scrims them a lot, even though he's not playing competitively himself. I think he's been very pivotal in helping them kind of advance themselves. He'll be humble about it, and they'll tease them a bit. But, like, that triangle has definitely helped them all improve as players. And, I mean, you know, Magic, about 2 years ago, he asked me, like, what have I considered doing coaching, dude? I think he should be doing some coaching. Like, he's definitely shown the value of having that kind of more experienced body there to help the two Canadian bros come out ahead.
Now, speaking of coming out, Wham is coming out of his base with his veils. He's going to head towards the deer over here. It's very much to the front of his base. So this is a somewhat exposed position, but it kind of tells you that he isn't really expecting a lot of aggression over here at the beginning from Baltune.
Yeah, you're against Ibids, right? Like, what are they going to do?
Yeah.
Worst case situation, they'll build a Desert Raider. But you could always just rush up an outpost to contest that. I wouldn't be surprised, actually, if Wham's prioritizing that. Like, he's got 3 on wood right now, so he should get enough to drop the outpost before the Desert Raider arrives.
Yep, and of course you do have Jean as well, so that's going to help quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, she's not going to be there anytime soon, right? Like, he's got, 2, so it won't be an immediate tech up. The house plus, I think, the lumber camp is usually enough to get her up to level 2. And in this matchup, you tend to go towards the range form because you're going to have to dive defenses, and also, if you're going to be up against Cav, you might as well have the thing that can snipe injured Cav running away.
School of Cavalry will be finished. I love survival techniques being picked up here by Wham. It's one of my favorite early game technologies. If you take the deer, it's a very, very cheap technology to grab, but it gives you a massive buff when it comes to gathering food from the deer carcasses.
Yeah, I wonder if this is like possibly going to be a fast 2 TC. That was gaining popularity zone, and you know, usually that's something that Ibids kind of hate, is those very aggressively timed TCs on pocket resources. Wouldn't surprise me though to discover that Wham just plays like 1 TC all in. Sounds a bit dicey when you rely on Knights up against eventual Camel Lancers, but that's where Jome really can be the X factor. And speaking of Jome, on our way out here, unfortunately, there was never an outpost going up from Wham.
And it's an awkward choice here, and you know, Desert Raider, you can switch between the sword and the bow, so that villager fleeing, Desert Raider doesn't need to change, you can just shoot it down with the bow.
Yeah, I think Baltune definitely could have got 1 or 2 melee strikes in there on the chase-in, but he chose to just go for the archer form just to guarantee the kill. It's going to be range form shown as expected. Extra Knights coming in. I love that from Baltune. Check that detail. He dropped his stables, actively adding in additional Desert Raiders. There's a real risk, actually, that Wham's going to have to fall back off the deer in the next 2 minutes.
I feel like he might be okay with that, frankly.
Really?
He might be just saying, listen, I can take this deer until the enemy forces arrive, and once there is too much pressure, I will just fall back. And it could be a great way to just get some extra savings in terms of sheep and just drag out the time of you running out of resources within your base.
Yeah, I think what's important here for Baltune is just keep this injured Desert Raider away from Joan now. Like, turn it into a Raider back in the enemy base, because the kind of weakness of what Wham's done here is he's stretched Joan thin. He has to defend the front side and now the back side because he hasn't walled himself in. It's like, realistically, with this extra Desert Raider plus the free one, the second free one, you just turn on this Knight right now, right? And then send the other Desert Raider far, far away. Cool Horseman detail, though, from Wham. And speaking of which, that's where the other Desert Raider is, so he does force him back off the deer.
I love the Horseman addition, though. It's something that's going to give you some extra mobility, and it allows you to pick off these Desert Raiders.
Yeah.
Little body blocking there by Baltune, but he is going to start losing those Desert Raiders slow and steady. He is doing a lot of damage to this pocket eco here to the front, though. Like, he's been harassing those villagers since the beginning of this game.
But this is typically why you build like 2 horsemen with this Ibid play. I'm a little bit shocked that Baltune didn't commit to that, because then the whole idea is when the horsemen come in, you pull back the Desert Raider, the horseman attacks the horseman, and then you wall up him with the Desert Raider strikes, right? On top of that, it stops your opponent doing this follow-up into archers, which outright cancels out the Desert Raiders. So Fast Castle is still going to be the play for Baltune. Nothing too unexpected here. It's going to be the Growth Wing standard. Looking at his resource pots as well, he's got a really nice spot for that double berry behind. Actually kind of insane how beneficial that spawn was. I'm getting a bit adventurous here. You just can't really afford to split up when Desert Raiders are riding blind on your flanks like this. It just gives the one-up that keeps you out of Baltune's base.
One thing to credit Baltune for is that despite the fact that he didn't commit to a lot of units, he was able to put a lot of pressure on the enemy base. So you see, he's going to head into Castle Age with basically no pressure on his base, despite the fact that he's facing knights. In fact, he was the one who managed to pick off a villager from the opposing player.
Yeah, did he actually build the outpost in the end? I think he did, right? Like, it's kind of hard to not do this. Yeah, double outpost. What makes this feel bad as well is something that makes the IB play on this map a little bit weaker is you can't get the emplacements because the stone's too far off, right? So these aren't initial defense points. You have to garrison them. On top of that, you don't have the extra range. So it is a bit easier for Wham to apply pressure.
Yeah, but Wham is pulling back, so that actually means that Baltune is going to have no trouble getting up to Castle Age over here. In fact, these Desert Raiders push away Wham from this gold mine as well. And KP, one thing I've noticed is that Wham is down by 2, actually almost 3 villagers over here, despite only losing 1. So there might have been some idle time on his TC as well.
I think that's what can easily happen on the deer situation. Like, remember that point where Desert Raider came in?
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, he probably had like 20 food on a bunch of them and didn't drop off. Like, it's always just a pain point when you play deer. Like, I remember this first came to players' attentions when Cauldron entered competitive play, is they realized their timings were off and they were missing villagers because you just went deer straight away and then you didn't drop off so long, you ran out of food. It's like, what is that? I think it's a 1.5 villager miss out by the looks of it. Because obviously you have the conversion, right?
You do lose 1 villager from Jean converting as well, of course, but still, there might have been
That's
some
still
idle
expensive,
time.
though. And, you know, considering Baltune is on his way now, he's about to have a bigger eco lead. Wham's going to try to harass this area. The cool thing is, like, if Baltune misclicks and rallies the villagers out on the right side, he can kill them. And what feels really bad for Baltune is without Wheelbarrow, he can't actually garrison that outpost on the berries. It takes way too long.
Yeah.
And a
But
ram.
he's up to Castle Age, and he's got a decent resource bank as well. I think that's going to be something immensely helpful over here, getting those initial Camel Lancers out.
Scout? Thrown away by Baltune. Double stables, but remember the Camel Lancers aren't here just yet. Wham is applying a decent amount of pressure. I'm just not sure
Triple
if it's enough
stables.
to be present.
It's actually triple stable play.
Okay.
He's going to have enough to squeeze out three Camel Lancers from these stables, but now he's pivoting into ranges.
Yeah.
Those Camel Lancers could be
It's clown
scary
card
over
time.
here.
It's clown card time. Dude, I love this. It's once again, it's the wheelbarrow issue, right? Like, you know your IB opponent is going to have wheelbarrow. You know he's not going to have arrow slits due to coastal cliff spawns. These outposts are just gone.
Yeah, this is scary for Baltune. I think the timing is great here for Wham. He was able to squeeze out 6 Camel Lancers. He's got 6 in queue, 3 are now out. But at the same time, he's going to lose the towers, and he's pushed away from both food and gold. At least he does have sheep to work with under his TC, so he's not going to miss out entirely on food gathering.
Can he actually deactivate the age here? That would be huge. Yeah, Baltune is calibrating for that. He's building more houses and whatnot behind this, archer ranges as well. But, you know, this speed switch from Wham, smart move, but Baltune already aware of what's coming. Has got archers being prepped. Even reveals it on the front side of his base.
I gotta say, I think he might be a little overzealous with his production buildings. I think that's going to be range number 5 he builds up.
Yeah.
But Wham, he leaves his ram alone.
I mean, it's done what it needs to. Like, the bigger issue now is, like, this many Camel Lancers. Great.
Yeah,
like, you know, you deny his food. What now? Because I just see a zone that you can't defend. In fact, at the back of the formation, she's going to be the first one to flop down. Divine Restoration guarantees it.
I genuinely feel like Camel Lancer is probably the most busted unit in the entire game. That combination of mobility, raw damage output, and the ability to hard counter units that are equally mobile, that is just a dangerous, dangerous combination.
I mean, it's busted in this matchup, but I don't think it's like the most busted unit. Like, the thing is, Camel Lancers have lower base damage, so usually the solution to Camel Lancers is just headbutt them, dummy, right? Like, if you attack them back straight away, they don't get the full damage, they disengage without the charge. And also remember, this is a unit that has, I think, it's 20 less base HP than standard knights in Castle Age, right? So they do have the downsides. Usually, actually, the OP play for Ibids is Golems, but you can't do Golems in this matchup due to knights.
You know, Wham, I love his posturing over here. He isn't allowing Baltune to escape, but oh my lord, Wham, leaving Jean exposed.
No.
That is probably the shortest-lived Jean I've ever seen.
Reminder, when you look at pub statistics, this patch, I think Ibis have like a 25% win rate against Joan, and then previously it's like a 45%. It's like multiple patch trends have shown that like Joan has a good time here. Joan is not having a good time here.
Oh. And Wham is bailing out on this. He wanted to attack, but he saw all the Camel Lancers hitting his base, and he's just going to fall back. I don't know about this, KP.
Reinforcement getting caught. Oh no, dude,
Yeah.
this is the worst case situation.
I feel like the problem is that he could have defended with the spears, and he could have just pushed the base of Baltune.
Like the bigger issue here now is you're gonna have to recalibrate for Camel Lancers, but then you have no solution for archers, right? Because like he's trying to build extra horsemen or knights, but I mean this is hard to scale when you need to get so many spears and archers together. Also, if you go a bit too overkill in the archer count, you're playing against Ibids. They can just build a mangonite like that.
And one Camel Lancer was peeled off. Such a nice move here by Baltune. That's going to get him 2 villager kills. Really, really valuable in the end,
Maybe more.
although he shouldn't lose that unit.
Looks like he got, was that 3 worker kills in the end, and then Flop's dead. Meanwhile, we talked about these berries being very beneficial for Baltune. It does give a clear target for Wham, though. So he knows exactly where to find that economy. And Baltune is a simple boy. You may be noticing those villages look like they should have old men walking sticks. He doesn't
That
have
Ram is
wheelbarrow.
awfully exposed again.
Archers are exposed as well. He needs to be careful about that.
I wonder if that was deliberate bait by Wham, though. Maybe he doesn't want that Ram, instead he just wanted to use up the charge from the Camel Lancers.
I don't know if you really want to fight them here. This is terrible. This is an absolutely atrocious fight for him to take. He just got wiped. That's it. GG. Baltune opening the series with a win.
Camel Lancers, man, and really, I think it came down to the fact that he was able to squeeze out those initial Camel Lancers. Wham timed his attack well, but Baltune had just enough resource bank to make sure that he has 6 or so Camel Lancers out, and from that point onwards, it was just difficult for Wham to deal with this.
Whew, so well played as well. Love the execution. Wow, I'm very greedy with that deer play. I can imagine that kind of working on a map with a retracted deer, but a 4 deer like that, and usually you get those type of deers on coastal cliffs, felt agreed too far. You know, I thought the plan was going to be outpost on the deer, so you always have a retreat point, but that never came. I think he just lost too much presence and too much escalation at that stage. From there on, it just looked kind of cruise mode for Baltune. And, you know, this is interesting because, you know, the Camelites get a lot of value in this matchup because of what you mentioned. You have to also remember, ever since the nerf to blacksmiths, it's much harder for Joan to get value out of a transition into spears because you don't get those tech upgrades for free. So great start to the series for Baltune, puts him 1 up. But now we're likely to go 1-1. This is Archipelago, and Wham has got the broken OP pick of the map draft.
Oh, Jushi coming in here. It also means that he is not going to have Jushi for moving out, though. That's one of the maps that this civilization is beloved on.
He has Marlians,
Baltune
though.
would have Chinese available on that map, though.
Yeah, he has Marlians or Order the Dragon. I'm imagining Wham's probably going to go Order of the Dragon there, Japanese 4 Lakes, and then Marlians Woodwall. Actually, no, I legit think you go Marlians on moving out, and then you have a Bastards of Woodwall. Like, they're a really good civ there. So, like, Baltune, as this draft goes on, like, looking at his picks, you're probably going to be seeing China coming out or moving out. 4 Lakes could be... I've seen some English builds that are kind of intriguing there, but probably more likely it's the other way around, where you do English and you try to do some cheese play or moving out. And then that would leave, what, Ottomans for Woodwall? It's been a while since I've seen them there,
Yeah,
but probably makes the most sense, and he does like trade.
some of the Civ picks of Baltune are a little wacky, whereas when
He's
you look
like
at
that.
Wham, he's got more obvious choices, but that's kind of what you expect from this matchup over here. On the
Yeah.
paper, Baltune is the underdog, so you expect him to bring out the cheesier approaches, or in general, the more surprising builds. Whereas for Wham, he might just be comfortable playing the standard builds here. And indeed, Archipelago Jushi, this is going to be a tough matchup for the HRE. We've seen the HRE variant, the Order of the Dragon, being a reasonable civilization on this map. But Jushi is just something else. That initial surge of gold income from the taxes is something that's so valuable in a water hybrid map.
Yeah, a little bit surprised he didn't maybe try English here. I think English maybe has a shot. The whole logic is you get the Abbey of Kings, you get a free king, you build a transport ship, send him to the other's home, right? Like all of a sudden, congratulations, I'm a Chinese king. But the other cool detail is obviously over time you get the discount on your ships that kind of adds up. Abbey of Kings makes for a very strong reset into healing. So, you know, English could have worked here. I'm wondering if they've actually moved ahead of HRE. Like HRE's economy is just so good, it's hard to turn your nose up at, right? So the only issue though for Baltune is like long term, he doesn't have a plan here, right? Like if he doesn't win the initial fights with HRE, slippery slope. Juji, dude, they're like this. They're vibing along. Like they don't ever feel like they go weak on this map. The meditation garden placements are usually decent, if not good. The transitions into your tech ups are faster because, of course, you have the quicker build up in your buildings, some more time gathering instead. Tang Dynasty gives you a 15% discount on both Feudal and Castle Age. And because you usually go with that Shaolin Monastery, you're very quick to pick up the initial relic. So I think Baltune's going to have to play this one fast.
I agree. I think he needs to just play very aggro. Obviously, it's hard to play aggro, so to say, in a water map like this. It's more about how you micro your units and what kind of leverage do you get in that first few minutes of water engagements. Can you snipe out an enemy galley? Can you potentially harass the enemy fishing eco? Those are the kinds of things that start building you a lead that you can eventually use to snowball the game out of control.
Yeah, and keep an eye out for whether Baltune moves his prelate towards the shoreline fish. Very big difference there. I've been noticing some players in the HRE, they leave their prelate on the wood line. You get way too much wood. You're not optimal about your tech up timing. That's a death sentence against the Juji. If they get 20 seconds of unharassed trade on your eco, it just feels like GG. Usually you're 2 boats down or idled up, and then it snowballs from there. So small details like that really do go the distance with the HRE opening.
Well, we just have 30 seconds left to go here, KP. Remaining maps would be Four Lakes, Woodwall, and of course, moving out. Baltune with a 1-0 lead over Wham. Definitely a surprise in game number 1, especially when you consider the history of these two players. But I can tell you one thing, KP. If Baltune pulls off an upset against Wham over here, this group is going to be a nightmare group as well. You do have Luciferon, of course, out there. CSO, no pushover either. One of the creeping underdogs of this tournament. And then, of course, Wham and Baltune. Let's see how this plays out here in game number 2, as we'll be heading into Archipelago.
Yeah, I'm just going to make the bold statement. I put Baltune down as one of my players to qualify, so don't sleep on this name. He's already proven why in game number 1. We now hop into that game number 2. So HRE versus Juji. Straight away, we're going to see the dock drop coming in. Not right next to Shoreline Fish. A little bit surprising for that. It means not as optimal of a drop-off point. Can we check where Baltune is at? So Prelate's already shifted towards the wood line. He's only moved one villager out right now, but that's because you're building up the dock. What I want to see him do very quickly here is you want to like pull probably 3 villagers onto the Shoreline Fish. Feudal tech timing here is everything in this matchup.
What I like about this spawn here for Baltune...
It's like, dude, I can't be arsed with pointless units to micro. Bye. Oh my god, that's brilliant. I love Baltune, man. It's so different. He's like, yo, can we eat that?
Now, hear me out. The scout costs you a population, right?
Yep. And then on top of that, like, why do you need it? It's just an extra annoying thing to potentially select.
We are laughing about this, but that's because, you know, this is unconventional in AOE IV. I do remember that in other Age titles, specifically AOE II, it's not uncommon to delete your scout in water maps like this because it takes up a population space, and sometimes certain build orders are tuned such that you save the wood you need on an extra house. So let's not sleep on this. Maybe he needs that one extra population spot just so that he can save up on a house.
Yeah, and I mean, they've both done it, right? So, like, it definitely makes you a little bit more efficient on that timing. Saves you a little bit. And we talked about that min-maxing really mattering. We've got 4 villagers out on the fishing. If we check the other side, how many did Baltune go up to? Because I really want to see, like, 3 here. I feel like 3 is... Ooh, he sticks on 1. Remember, you still gather all the gold up as well. Like, that's another nice little quirky thing you have as Juji is taxation does make your timing quicker. Add in the fact you spend 15% less on your feudal. And also, the other thing is, like, look at this spawn. This is a gorgeous spawn. Just check the right side of that tree line, and you'll know exactly where that meditation garden's going.
Yeah, that's a very, very nice spawn indeed for him. Now, I just want to highlight the other thing here. You have your wood line and the shorefish very close for Baltune, so you could just position that prelate in between those two, so you could actually buff the villagers on the food as well. Looks like he's not doing that just yet. A lot of villagers on Shorefish though here for WAM compared to just like 2 or 3, I think, for Baltune.
So, how I don't think any of them scout out, right? Like, I've seen a few players sometimes pull a fishing boat early on to see where their opponent is. We've seen a few different approaches, right? Like the transport ship play from Roos was one way to go, and you play the scout in. I've seen some players just blind punt the direction. The tough part with Archipelago, that scouting is really important because sometimes you get the player spawning polar opposite, and sometimes it's more like this, where they're on the neighboring island.
You gotta love the peace and the zen here in Dark Age, no?
Oh, yeah. No, because I was just thinking, like, look how far out Baltune's gold was. He kind of got conned. Like, that feels like a very far off gold vein. I think the berries pushed it further out. I mean, it is going to be good for the Archon, because you could drop the Archon in between the two tree lines, and you have longer wood time here. But it does suck for that initial walkout. And yeah, Medigarden already in the way. It is going to be in that perfect spot.
Yeah, you could argue that on the other side for WAM, his closest gold mine is the one on the shoreline, which could be a little troublesome. But yeah, I agree with you. A bit of a extra walking. Still, WAM is likely going to be the first player into Feudal Age over here, and that is a big edge to look at on these water maps. He does have just one dock up, though.
It's okay for this opening, right? Like, it's all about optimal timings, because this is going to give him the archer ship straight away. Archon now only on the way, and this is going to be a huge difference, man. Like, 5 villages versus 6, but then also remember Juji built a lot quicker, and this timing is a lot later.
Yeah, I'm actually wondering if, yeah, Baltune is going to commit more villagers. He's up to 8. It's not even the 5 versus 6 villagers, it's the fact that with the Chinese and Jushi, you do get that build rate buff, which is immensely valuable in timing-sensitive builds, like water builds, for instance.
Yeah, and it just pains you more to have to invest more villages like this, right? Because remember, the first village is worth 100%, each additional is worth 25%. So, like, you're just missing out on gathering, right? Or getting an inferior tech timing. First archer ship on the way. There's going to be some idle time involved in this. Oh, check that, by the way. Look at south side. Wham sent a fishing boat down there to see where his opponent was. That's really smart.
Yeah, I love that. I think, I don't know, is that fishing boat gathering, though? It
Yeah,
might
yeah.
actually be permanently set in there, so it just kind of goes back and forth between the dock and that position, and that could be valuable to detect future demo flanks.
Here we go. Baltune queues up the archer ship. Not sure about that here. Usually you want the spear one to push away. Like, it's kind of one of those concessions, right? It's like, if your opponent has a knight advantage, you build a spear, right? Kind of similar here, when the first archer ship comes out, if you react with an archer ship as well, you don't have an immediate way of swatting it away.
Yeah, but there's already a war chunk out there. So Wham does have a
Nice body
massive lead
blocks.
over here, and you can't even garrison all of those boats. Fishing boats are going down. First
Just need
galley
to keep
just out for
closing.
Baltune.
Yeah, so already got one worker kill. No harassment on his own eco. Spear ship is already on the way. Baltune's in trouble.
Yeah, that is looking very grim for Baltune. He lost 2 fishing boats for no return. And I think what's more worrisome is his overall combat ship count. He's stuck at 1 galley. He's got no follow-up to this.
It's not just that. He went a dock too far. Like, 3 docks versus 2, you've seen the difference. Like, I kind of get it because Juji is stronger on the push with the increased production rate, but not that much drastically different.
I wonder if this is not even about naval combat at this point, because one
Is
thing
it
I'm
ping?
noticing is that to the north, he only has 3 fishing boats close to that dock. I'm actually wondering if he's just kind of playing around, trying to just use the docks as the garrison points for the fishing boats and not commit a lot of resources into combat ships.
I mean, like, going fast castle here just does nothing for you, though, right? Like, this is not a map that's favorable to fast castle. We're not in the day and age where hulks were locked behind that age up.
And if you wanted to fast castle, you wouldn't be doing 800 food per minute income. You would be sending some villagers on shorefish to actually get the food you need.
Yeah, it's like 1 relic for Regnitz. Ooh, well done. Like, or a 5% increase in attack speed. Like, it's not going to save you here. So I'm a little bit confused. Baltune, I think he just kind of got caught off guard by this.
He's getting wheelbarrow right now. His food income is increasing. And he's getting some hawks out there, but this is, at the very least, going to be a super defensive naval gameplay from him.
Yeah, and like the meditation gun is going to be a problem in about 3 minutes. Like, the thing that really makes it scary on this map is how often you can easily get double gold. If you check the gen right now, it's probably getting about 50 gold, and I want to say like maybe 32 wood, right? So 50, yeah, 30. So pretty much what we were expecting. It's a really powerful play because over the minutes, that just adds up to 1, 2, 3 demos. And we've seen how often these water battles are decided by one decisive demo pump.
Exactly. Now, I could see Baltune trying to just fast castle for the Castle Age decks over here. But at the same time, his fishing eco is suboptimal because it was pressured. And if Wham realizes that his opponent is playing very defensive, he's just gonna double down on fishing and beat him to Castle Age.
Yeah, because you do it so much quicker, right? It's like
Yep.
you save 15% and then you build it much faster. So the moment you sense it, even though the HRE economy is better at this stage, it's not 40% better. It's only 20%, right? Like, it's not as big of a difference as you think when you think about it that way.
Hawk count up to reasonable levels though here for Baltune, and Wham needs to be careful. He might have stopped producing combat ships for the last like minute or so. And now combat ship count is actually better over here for Baltune. Wham does have a flanking galley over here, something that could easily take out fishing boats.
Good
Nice
reaction.
response from Baltune.
Yeah, that was sick on the retreat as well on the north side. Baltune was on the very edge of range, so he just kept shooting the small ships. Just completely reset Wham. Big mistake made here by Baltune, though. Needs to pull the fishing boats to save his bacon. It's going to be tight. Funnel shots come in. Demo not able to finish off, but the archer ship will find some value.
Yeah, nice little detail by Wham, shooting at that retreating Hawk before the demo hit. The demo doesn't instantly kill the the Hawk, but it does like 90% or so damage. So if you can damage that Hawk just a tiny bit with your arrow ship, you can one-shot that with the demo.
Baltune is going for a big GG punch, and that makes sense in this matchup. We mentioned the HRE is like 15 minutes are done, whereas usually you're like, longer this goes, the better I feel, right? So that's why you're seeing him queue up so many demos here. He needs a decisive strike in the next 4 minutes. Otherwise, this starts to lean against you because you can already see if you look on the mini-map, that wood line on the Archon has already been munched through halfway. More than halfway.
Yeah, I think I'm starting to understand what Baltune is trying to do over here. I think he doesn't want to engage into the classical naval warfare that players play because he probably feels like he would just lose that against Wham. So instead what he's doing is basically just trying one big YOLO all-in push and see where it goes. And part of the reason why he's been very, very defensive is because he needed that time to build up this YOLO push. And
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the start is pretty decent because Wham has actually left his base.
Ooh, did someone call a midwife? Because I heard pushing. Here we go. Archers on the front side means that his counter demos is going to start going down first. Demo ship's now being pulled by Wham. Baltune right now body blocking his assault route here. A lot of demos coming through, but 2 just resetting him. 1 making it in. That's going to be a big hit. Demos all low on HP.
That is terrible for Baltune. Having his demos damaged like that, that just takes them out of the game for most part of this fight. Although some of them managed to connect. Decent trades on that side, but when you look at the ship counts, it's still looking better for Wham.
Yeah, and now the counter demos come out, right? Like Archer ship's been pushed back. Baltune now just trickling in demos one by one. A bit of a missed micro there. Wham not paying attention. Gives a freebie.
Yeah, at the same time, though, Baltune is losing his fishing eco back at home. He didn't notice as he was microing his fleet. And at the end of the day, just look at the overall population, KP. Oh, no.
And that's why. That's why we look at the population. An Archer ship from Wham sneaks around the back. Baltune completely neglecting his economy.
Yeah, it's difficult, right? You talked about this. A single demo can decide the game. He's focusing on his fleet. Oh, no, he's actually diving.
It's just 1 or 2 slip-ups, man. The concentration slips for a second, and Juji, as seems so typical in this tournament, take the lead on Archipelago.
Such a fast-paced game over here. In the last seconds of this game, he tried to dive that low HP Imperial officer with the galleys, but he missed out on it, so lost both of his galleys. But yeah, it definitely felt like Baltune didn't want to apply much water here, and he just wanted to do one all-in push, see where it goes. Didn't really work out, so Wham gets back into this series in less than 15 minutes.
Not something most men will brag about, but in this situation, we'll take it. And guys, I see people moaning about ads. You know what the solution to that is? Subscribe. This is why it's so important. When you see a tournament that has water maps, subscribe. 2 seconds and you can miss it all. That's how crazy fast it is on waterfronts. It means that we are not going to have an insanely fast series, although it was an insanely fast second game. We're getting some distance. 1-1 scoreline. Next up, we're heading to Four Lakes. Now, this is an interesting one. Japan versus English. Japanese, definitely, I would say the best civ in the game right now in 4x. English are actually kind of creeping up there, Lytical. The opening of the king that applies some pressure, the safety of the fast castle builds, and the Yorishiro-like effect of knights has really impressed me with this civ.
Yeah, there's also that defensive potential that you often very much highlight. And I think the interesting thing with the English is that here it's legitimate to try and play longbows to try and pick off those initial shinobi, but you can also play into the king. Although, if I recall correctly, yesterday we had a very big, disappointing move from a king, just getting killed by 2 shinobi. That was like, I was watching that and I was like, dude, because shinobi do get bonus damage against melee troops, so you gotta be careful if you use a king against them. But yeah, I think there is some versatility here with the English. But at the same time, I feel like Japanese have that raw juggernaut power.
Yeah.
And the reason why I'm not the biggest fan of the English here is because one of the strongest elements of English gameplay is playing condensed base with a lot of farms. You won't be doing that on this map.
Yeah, it's going to be all about the fishing. Now, in fairness to that fishing count, you don't really rival the Japanese discount, but you do get 10% off those fishing boats, right? So every little helps. The interesting thing about that king, the king should be able to beat the shinobi, right? You cycle charge in, you move away. So unless your opponent is using like a Shunshin bug, which shouldn't be telling me with this, there is a Shunshin bug of some kind. I still can't figure it out, Lidicore, but I was casting a game on 4x the other day on my channel, and I noticed that someone managed to double teleport with the shinobi. So I- unless Wham knows that secret art, theoretically the king should be able to dent those initial shinobi. And if you think about it, if you kill 2 shinobi, the king pays for himself.
Well, we just have 20 seconds left to go here, KP. 4 lakes with Woodwall and moving out remaining for game number 4 and 5 here in the Surfshark map draft. But we'll be heading into 4 lakes first, the map choice from the hybrid category, as Wham is going to be in command of the Japanese, facing off against Baltune's English.
Yeah, a lot of water in these drafts, but then again, we are sponsored by Surfshark, so we've got to surf it up. Into the lakes we go. Wham on the Japanese, Baltune on the English in the north. What has he got in mind in this game? Obviously, going to be expecting Abbey of Kings. I mean, in theory, you could do a Council Hall build. It depends on the spawn, and unfortunately, from that angle, I imagine we're looking at Abbey of Kings, because that is a back spawning gold for Wham.
Yeah, that's actually a very, very nice gold spawn there for Wham. Now, his woodlines are kind of stuck together to the south of his TC, so it's actually a decent pressure point. If you can pressure this angle, you can pretty much cut off Wham from all of his accessible wood. It's going to be an interesting aspect of the game to look at. He also opted to go for the pawn that's a little further away from his base instead of the one that's close to the TC. I don't know about that, KP. I don't think it's going to be a big difference maker. Players, they put a lot of effort into finding the enemy pawn at the very beginning. But I feel like maybe going for that pawn to the very south could have been better for him.
I think it's just the positioning, right? It's like you play forward of the tree line to drop the dock versus this one, which is harder to secure. So like you just take the center. And there's a really cool play for the Japanese. I'm wondering if Wham's going to do it here, where you actually build your farmhouse out on where the dock is. So that you basically have vision up the stream. And it makes it much harder for your opponent to dock down. So we'll see if he actually goes to that. It's a really efficient play. Just because it's a house as well as a drop-off location. So like you actually keep your villager optimal. And yeah, there you go. He done it. So farmhouse right there. I mean, we'll discuss the positioning later because there's no shoreline fish there, but it's extra vision and it's also a blocking point against an aggressive English dock.
It's also, indeed, as you said, extra vision, and that's what matters over here. Because oftentimes you see players, despite all their efforts, actually conceding an enemy dock drop on their pawns because, you know, these players are crafty. They will sneak around and they will find the very spot where you're not looking.
Yeah, and it's always in the most unexpected times, right? Like, you know, you could even see a world in which I've seen these type of games where the type of wood situation Wham's got, a player sneaks into that south pond, right, in the corner when you don't expect it. So I don't think we're going to see that in this game just because, like, English don't really have any immediate value play, and you don't want to play into the Japanese docks bluntly because doing that means the Coca Township gets maximum value. Interesting to see if Wham rushes that Coca Township, by the way. We saw a little bit earlier today, someone decided to go for that Coca on a delay with only 6 villages. Kind of cost him control of the opening. There you go. So it's going to move out. Is that an outpost? Okay, no, it's not a farmhouse. I was going to say, outpost would have been weird to watch. But notice how close he is to the shoreline now, right? And like he's almost going to have perfect vision on that area. He could even probably have went a little bit deeper, and then he'd always see a dock drop.
Yeah, and he's going to continue just marching up to the north, making sure that there's going to be no dock drop. We've actually seen this from the very beginnings of this map being played in competitive settings. Back then, it was players just placing small segments of palisade walls to prevent enemy dock drops. But Baltune isn't thinking about it just yet. He is just chilling back at home. And speaking of palisade walls, it looks like we might see some here for Wham.
Yeah, it's so expensive as well, because people do like those short palisades, but you have to remember that it costs extra wood to do a short palisade, right? Because the initial foundation cost is 21 wood, then every extra segment is 7. It's like, sometimes I watch that play and I'm like, I feel like you just spent more to cover less. So, bigger fan of these house plays coming out. A little kind of interesting thought here. I actually think Byzantines could be decent on this map because of the border settlements. Because you could just house and you could see all flank approaches. And the whole idea is, like, if you think about it, Four Lakes isn't really about water warfare. It's about water economy. So Byzantine's very terrible, easily the worst ship in the game. Droman doesn't really matter. Yeah, dude, I like, it's gotten to the point where I purged the name from my mind. It's such a bad ship.
But it's a fun ship, okay?
No.
It's fun.
It's fun for the other person because they win. Do you like winning, Litter?
No, I like having fun. That is what gaming is all about, KP.
Oh, you're one of those people. Probably still pick Mongols.
All right, Coca Township coming in here for Wham, and it's going to be a council hall opening for Baltune. So, one thing is sure. Wham should not be able to do damage to those docks because you should have longbows around that will protect them.
It's cool as well, right? The scouting time was buffed by Wham. He knows about the council play. He's got to have anticipated this. Like, this is a very unorthodox build in the current meta, but it's very smart, right? The Crocodile has no value, but this is where Wham's probably just play kind of an atypical land map situation where you just outpost up your gold and say, Castle Age it is. One interesting thought here, actually, is like, you know, I have seen some cool builds around Yumi for the Japanese. I don't think he needs to do it here. I think it's kind of overkill. So yeah, instead he's just going to flip the script onto the English economy.
Yeah, I feel like here for the Japanese player, we talked about what the English player can do. Here for the Japanese player, I think the most obvious way of playing this is just contesting enemy pawns, but also leveraging your own, getting to Castle Age, and then getting those mounted samurai out. If Baltune invests heavily into longbows, those would just get butchered by the mounted samurai. So I think he's going to be more than happy if his opponent ends up committing a lot to longbows.
From a ship on the way. Of course, they are going to be a little bit cheaper for the English. Archer ship coming up from Wham, so just look at the aggro play. He could easily get into the arrow slits, but the problem is he now needs to build on the outposts. Like, that's kind of smart for Baltune, right? It's like typically this dock drop comes in, and naval arrow slits ruins your day, but you just can't afford. You have to choose between land or sea. Yeah, this archer ship seems like a bad idea now.
Yeah.
Okay, he agrees.
That was a very nice last-minute cancel, by the way. Like, this way, he actually didn't sink a bunch of resources into a ship that would be destroyed in just a second. Instead, Wham already has half the resources he needs for Castle Age. That could be a sub-8-minute Castle Age for him.
Yep, and Baltune has a problem, because now it's just like, is this council hall a joke to you? Yes, it's a joke. He built 3 longbows, and it just doesn't do anything now.
Yeah, it's, like, this is the thing that I was concerned about for the English on this map. Like, on paper, you look at this and say, hey, my longbows will pick off the shinobi. It's such a good response to the Japanese early game. But frankly, the Japanese almost do not care about that because, well, if they can't torch down your docks, so be it. At the same time, Wham has that Juggernaut eco, and you see he's going to have a massive head start going into Castle Age.
I find Coca usually looks OP when you overreact to it. Like, it's one of those things where it requires a level of engagement for it to even feel valuable, right? Especially since the nerf where you don't immediately get a shinobi anymore. It's like usually the reaction that's reasonable, that's tame, is build a second dock, dummy, right? Like, don't panic, overreact, don't build 1,000,000 units, just build a second dock. Because those shinobi can't block you out before you get an archer ship. And, you know, the longbow idea in theory is good, but now you have no value. I imagine we're going to be looking at a white tower play here from Baltune, because if you play King's Palace, the game is definitely over.
Yeah, I feel like it's very similar to trade in many cases. Oftentimes, just the fact that
Yeah.
you could have a massive upside from trade, or in this case, the Koyoka Township, by torching down the docks, it forces a disproportionate reaction from the opposing player, and oftentimes just end up going for a silver tree, or sometimes even a Chamber of Commerce, just to say, okay, I will see what kind of response my opponent is doing to this, because oftentimes they end up overreacting.
You were pitching me a valuable sale until you brought up Chamber of Commerce. But no, you're all right. Like, that's what made trade OP for a while, right? It's like the Silver Tree, the best build I ever saw, it's actually Recon and Mist that came up with it. The whole idea is that you just double pump traders and then didn't build any more. Because the reaction it took to shut down that trade, you already paid it back in what you spent, but your opponent's now like in the hole while you're going Castle Age. Like, it's an insanely potent play. Longbows in the meantime. That's the wraparound. Okay, that is a disgusting spot.
Oh, that is beautiful. Folks, line of sight is shared, so while the longbows cannot see the villagers, as long as the scout can see the villagers from the other side, the longbows can shoot over the trees. So I guess Wham is lucky that he only lost one villager there.
Wow.
Castle Age timing is nice here for Baltune. I'm not sure if I agree with the Council Hall, though, or the King's Palace, though, as the landmark of choice. He's doubling on barracks, so I think he's going to play Spearman. But I would have potentially preferred just going for a white tower and trying to match this with knights. He's got a good food eco himself.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like you have too many villagers and not enough to defend them, right? Like, funnily enough, actually, if Wham senses this at all, you just drop archery range next and Yorishiro switch into Yuumi. And it's kind of crazy. Like, Yuumi at this age, like, you'd think, oh yeah, just react to Lombos. No. Like, I've seen what happens there. Yuumi in Castle Age is kind of like HRE versus English. The movement speed is just too much for you to handle.
Now, if Baltune is playing it this way, I think having walls is a must for him. He's going to have a very slow-moving army to work with. He's going to be playing into double town centers, so he needs to protect his extra villagers. I really think that he must play walls over here. If he's playing wide open, Wham is just going to run circles around him with the mounted samurai, and that second town center that he got from the landmark, that's going to be nearly useless.
Yeah, like the bigger issue now is like Baltune just going into Spearman like this. I said Yuumi, like actually just racks, right? Like if it was a land map, you'd need Yuumi because it's too expensive otherwise, but on a water map, Ona Bigisha sound pretty damn good about it.
That's true. That's very true. It's a fairly versatile unit as well. It does have that mobility plus ranged attack combination. So it can even pick off spears unless you get swarmed by them. But I think Wham, seeing this, he should be very, very delighted. It's just Spearman, which is definitely not a game-winning unit composition for Baltune to work with.
No. And, you know, relics are already on the way home for Wham, right? Like, realistically, I'd be surprised if Baltune gets more than one here, because I think he's going to have to send Spearman out to grab that relic. And you can't send Spearman out until you've got enough to defend your base.
I think, given Baltune's position, he should be happy if he gets a relic.
Let's
and that's the other reason why this 2TC build is a little awkward. All the advantage that you get from potentially building up a villager lead, it's going to be offset by the relics, but it's actually going to be even more so long-term. So, again, I love Wham's position here. I feel like Baltune might be playing a little reactionary over here, and that could backfire very soon.
I just really want to give a lot of praise to the Canadian bros. Poppy Port especially, the only player to believe that Yuumi actually had a relevance here. And I've been convinced for a long time. You know, like I've heard so many players like, please, Yuumi need buff. It's like, I don't think Yuumi need a buff. If anything, Japanese just need an eco buff and feudal. Because Castle Age Yuumi spam is kind of bonkers, Litter. The rate at which you escalate, it's genuinely like playing against Zerg. Like, you know the builds we see from Malians where they flood? Yuumi does the exact same thing. Baltune is at risk of getting outnumbered fast.
Yeah, now one thing Baltune could do is pivot into men-at-arms, especially because Wham is actually being slowed down by population constraints. And many of these mounted samurai actually charged in here, so you see a lot of them are heavily damaged or outright killed here. Looks like some of them will get away, though, and you do have a couple of Shinto priests to heal these up with.
I don't think Baltune even sees those Yuumi yet, though, right? Like,
yeah,
he's
I don't think he does.
Yeah,
he doesn't have a
the
scout.
archery range. Yeah, he has no scout, but the archery ranges were dropped to the back of the base, so Wham is intentionally hiding this play, because he's seen that Baltune is about as one-dimensional as a piece of paper, right? Like, he's just building spears.
KP, I have very bad news for you, because a piece of paper is two-dimensional.
no, that's not true. All right, like if you flatten it enough.
I mean, yeah, true, but if I flatten you enough, you're also one-dimensional, right?
I mean, if you flatten me enough, I mean, that sounds like I don't know if that counts as a get slim fast diet or something which should probably be on kick. But anyway, Yumi count is going up pretty fast. And the bad news for Baltune is he's making the worst possible unit against Yumi.
And look at the lack of mobility. This is what I'm talking about when I'm referring to the walls. If the game plan for Baltune is to build up an eco lead through the addition of a second town center, then he needs to protect those villagers. Otherwise, his game plan falls apart, and he's only up by 6 eco, but at the same time, he's missing out on all those relics.
Maybe they're the distraction for Baltune's real account. No, that's dying as well. So this is really just going to be a 5 relic game. And Baltune hasn't really set up on the east side pond, right? So it's not like he's got an edge there. He's very slow on that escalation. Mount Samurai is starting to wrap around the back. You said that Baltune needed a wall. Well, guess what? Wham's doing it for him.
I love it. This is actually, I think Beastie was the one who really started doing this on this map. Once you get to this mid-castle age and the game gets chaotic, you start to just wall across the entire map, because what you have back at home is an absolute juggernaut of an economy. Crazy food eco from the fishing, a lot of gold available across the map as well. If you section off the map, it's going to be very difficult for your opponent to pressure your eco, and if they can't pressure your eco, you will just snowball the game with an infinite flow of units.
More villagers about to go down. Range damage 2 just came in as well. I believe we have got armor clad surely at this stage. No, I don't think he has. Like it feels like they're taking too much damage. Okay, he has. I'd still, like the Yumi, even more than a tickle is surprising here. The problem is, like, you're going to men at arms, but you know, I'm expecting what? You just keep scaling Mountain Samurai with this type of economy, or you can take the easier route now and just go into Samurai Yumi.
I think siege weapons could also be a thing here, but I think for Baltune, it starts by cleaning up all these raiding mounted samurai in his base. He's finally walling off the southern part of his map. But you see, he's now heading out towards this gold mine to the front, which is more than exposed. That's the only safe gold he has. Safe in quotation marks. So now, if Wham starts pressuring this angle, he can easily cut Baltune off from all accessible gold.
I'm wondering, is Wham considered like a second TC down the line? Because this is the thing, like the lakes do reach a critical mass where they just don't return enough anymore. So like, there has to be something conscious on his mind. But maybe we see Eurashira drop. That has started to return as a popular play. Like, it actually fell off for a while because if you commit Eurashira into your TC, it's a permanent loss, right? Like, you can't get that Eurashira back.
Was still incomplete here, and once again, Wham started mixing in more mounted samurai, realizing that Baltune stopped making spears. And as long as these wars are incomplete, Baltune will just keep chasing these mounted samurai all around his base, I feel.
Yeah, and he's not addressing the real threat coming now, right? Because he's going mass men at arms. So this sets up the players expecting. Like Japan with a Dachi Tech samurai, they turn you into mincemeat, right? They make you look like a delicious chunk of sushi. It's not even close.
And there's one bannerman out there for Wham. He is getting the second one very soon. Wars will finally complete for Baltune. I just don't know where he's going from here. Just look at the ecoscape. Food is great for Baltune.
Yeah.
That's a little underwhelming for Wham. It's actually surprisingly underwhelming for Wham.
Well,
when you look at the gold income...
Like, this is why Coca, I think, is overrated quite often. Is like, you could have had all these farms, right? And then wood. Right?
Oh, sure enough. I'm just saying, like, compared to Baltune's food eco...
Oh, yeah. He's taking a dump on Wham's economy. Like, that's another reason why he had to go Yumi. I mentioned a bit earlier, it's like Mountain Samurai plus, like, Samurai, for example, bad. So you have to go Yumi. But, I mean, Baltune's reaction has been clean, right? Like, if Wham can get enough Samurai together, let's say they both wait until pop and nothing happens, Samurai will win. The problem in this game is Baltune should reach pop far before Wham.
Yeah. He needs it, because this gold mine is more than exposed, but I agree, it's like 40 men-at-arms he's playing around with, and Wham only has 12 samurai. In fact, most of the army that Wham has is just Yumi. Sacred Victory unlocked over here by Wham, but he doesn't really have those positions fortified, so this is not something that Baltune should worry about. And I'm actually wondering if Wham is flirting with the idea of Imperial Age, especially because he's been floating a lot of food for the last, like, minute or so. He used it all up, but he still is floating a lot of gold.
That would be an interesting way to lose the game quickly here. I think if you go imp, Baltune just pushes, right? Like, even if you have a Castle Crow, I don't think that works against this many men-at-arms.
What's a little puzzling is that Wham walled off the far right, but he actually stopped walling right there, so everything else is wide open. He's looking to pressure this gold mine, though, and that's definitely the prime target for him, but he doesn't really have the army right now to deal with 40+ men-at-arms.
No. It's fake posturing by Wham. If he calls the bluff, he's going to have to retreat. Baltune moves in for the clash. Berries are working against him. This is why England hates berries so much. Not because of the terrible gathering rates, because they ruin their fights. Still, this retreat, like, you think it's going to be fast because of Yuumi, but you have to remember Samurai slow this down to a grinding halt.
Yeah, and if you keep your Yuumi alive, but you lose your Samurai, that's just terrible here still for Wham. Finds a choke point, take a fight in. Mangonel gets some good hits out there.
Yeah, and now he's fighting because the attack speed aura isn't there anymore. Smart read by Wham. Baltune theoretically should be able to keep the flood going, though. Crossbows are starting to show up, and the Mango yet to target them.
Yeah, that's weird because the Samurai get butchered by all these crossbows, and because the Samurai are gone, men-at-arms can now hit the archers. Baltune was actually a little late flanking around the gold mine to hit the Mangonel.
I think he's just dead. I mean, the problem is, like, the eco's caught up now, but the numbers as well. Baltune, this was about the whole army, right? Like, half the army was chilling at home on a coffee break. You know how us British people are. We love our breaks. But now that the crossbows are here, great wallop from the double Mango play. May just about turn this around, but those Mango's now in trouble. Men-at-arms dive in. Yuumi do no damage against this. Crossbows, terrible micro there from Baltune, but he does finally take out the siege.
That might have been a lifeline for Wham, though. If he doesn't land those 2 hits on the crossbows, I think this fight snowballs out of control. Baltune is creeping up with the towers for the network of castles aura again, but many of those men-at-arms and crossbows are battered. And really, that Mangonel came in so clutch for Wham, might have dragged this game out just to the extent he needs it.
Yeah, I mean, I could just envision being Baltune in that situation, just selecting the men-at-arms and constantly clicking on the Mangonel and forgetting about your duties to the back line. Like, that's crazy. I mean, that game, that looked like a pivotal moment where Wham should have lost it, but that double Mango strike on the backside, completely setting Baltune back here. Still an eco lead. He should be able to inflate a little bit quicker, but all of a sudden, we may have to look a lot deeper in this game.
Well, you're saying eco lead, but when you look at the overall resource gather rates, it's actually favoring Wham. He's sitting on 3 relics, soon to be 4, and 2 sacred sites as well. Mind you, sacred site countdown is down to 7 minutes. But at the same time, Baltune is lacking blacksmith upgrades. I think part of the reasons why he lost that fight is because blacksmith upgrades are looking a lot better for Wham right now.
The crazy thing is he's so focused on getting that aura, he's not looking after the formation of units here. Wham continues to push him back. Samurai count now up to 35. Baltune has a big issue.
And remember, Baltune didn't lose most of the men-at-arms in that fight. He lost the crossbows because of the Mangonel shots, and those are the crossbows he needed to start picking off those Samurai.
I think this is the snowball point the other way, right? Like, now you have to get into Springhorns. English is one of the hardest civs to siege transition. The only reason it's looked easy these days is White Tower's kind of OP, right? Like, lets you get into that. But Siege Workshop on the front side, I mean, that's bold. It's almost like he's holding up a pea shooter gun and going, I swear, I'll shoot, because if you do build anything out of that, it's gonna die.
But he needs to fight because his villagers are being pushed away from this gold mine. He had to move to the north to take that last intact gold vein. He's gonna have to fight very soon because otherwise he's gonna be denied of all gold. And of course, Wham is still sitting on the sacred site countdown, now down to 6 minutes.
He's looking pretty dead at this point. Samurai gonna back up. Mango shots coming in. He needs to fin the herd and get him right now. Like, ignore the Samurai, but Wham, on point with the micro. Body blocking him all the way around. Finally wanted to leak in. But this is not a quick kill. He's not gonna be able to do it. The Udachi tech clears him up, and Baltune at risk of being swatted away like a fly.
And because he has no other siege workshops, he couldn't bring in a Springald to snipe those Mangonels. I love how Wham only committed to this fight once the siege workshop was gone, knowing that there's nothing that can take out the Mangonels as long as he body blocks the man-at-arms.
I mean, that feels like that has to be it, right? Like, Baltune, I'm not really sure how you get the army back together. The military lead is out of control in this game. The Samurai count, every time I look at it, is going up. And we already mentioned this is the count of men-at-arms. Like, crossbows also feel very limited in this situation unless you've already got 50 together.
Oh my, I mean, Baltune, when he broke out of his base, it seemed like that's an army that Wham cannot stop, but that Mangonel just wiping out half of the crossbows, just taking out the tool that was supposed to destroy all these samurai, and now it's just Wham on a roll. His army is twice the size of Baltune's, and all these precious farms that Baltune built up, they'll be gone in a second.
It just shows you how one single moment in these fights can change everything. Just imagine how different these fights would now look if Baltune didn't lose half of his crossbows to that mango wall. If staggered formation, for example, had just been used there. But we don't deal in ifs and buts. You know, if ifs and buts were cookies and nuts, then every day would be Christmas. But right now, Wham's the one getting the presents. 2-1 scoreline already on match point.
This is a tough one to take for Baltune because despite the fact that the game's beginning was a little shaky and it didn't seem like it was going to go well for Baltune, he had a definitive moment where it seemed like Wham was going to get overwhelmed by all these men-at-arms and crossbows. But, you know, you gotta credit Wham for taking that fight at the place he did. It was a choke point blocking out the men-at-arms. He had a mangonel supporting. It was outside the range of the network of Castle's aura. And really, that single fight at like 20 minutes or so, that's the one that pretty much won the game for Wham.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that the English were able to stay that close and competitive actually in that game. Like I was saying, I think they have crept up the rungings. I put them in like a top 5 placement for Four Lakes, so not a bad pick there. You know, I did notice people mentioning ads popping up there. Once again, like we don't like choose the ads. Twitch does it. I do know that there's a system where it somehow chooses when to run the ads, and I have a theory, Litter. It might be when my voice squeaks. because no, hear me out. Like I read about this. Twitch actually has it set up so that in high action moments, like it says it's not meant to, but I think it does the opposite. That it brings them out. So apologies, guys. Nah, I'm not going to promise not to squeak. I guess the only thing you're going to be able to do is subscribe to the channel. I mean, I haven't seen any gifted subs in like the last, what, hour? Has it been an hour already? Like, big shout out to people who came out earlier. Like, if you haven't subbed to the channel yet, if I'm not seeing those emote icons, why am I not seeing them? Dude, like, this is the first weekend of the main event. We've still got several weekends to go. Do you know how many hours of gameplay that is without ads? Do you know how many emotes that is to spam around the platform? Oh my god, good bang for buck. Good luck. Take advantage of that. Thank you very much. But now we do see the funkiness, Litter. I mentioned that Ottoman pick and the chances of it coming up. It's going to be making an appearance on Woodwall. Dude, this is going to be a trade game.
Oh my. And we talked about this. Baltune has the less conventional civilizations going into these games. Also means that he's going to choose between Chinese and Delhi for moving out if we get to game number 5. But Ottomans, it's not something that you very commonly see on a Woodwall. I guess the big question mark here for Baltune, you know, is that if it's so obvious of a trade potentially, then Wham knows what to do against that. So I think there's going to be a lot of plays here on this map for mind games. It's going to be an interesting one to take a look at because we could be in for a slow start like we've been in this map, Four Lakes.
I mean, I think ABBA just out trades though, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. Like, this could be... What I'm thinking about is how Four Lakes played out. Once the players realized that they cannot sneak docks, it was just a back and forth kind of posturing in the middle of the map, eco-booming until some critical fights happened. I could see the same thing happening here, like saying, okay, we're going to do a little posturing back and forth, but if I cannot build up a decisive advantage, I'm just going to boom back at home. We could easily see 2 players trading, for instance.
Yeah, I think like you still go military wing opening because the thing is I'm expecting this to be a military school, so you'll have to deal with the spears, right? So naturally you get double arch, double spear, you kill the spears, then you go block their trade. Then it's just passive trade at home, right? But then you could just sneak out and set up trade over time. So like, you know, if that happens, I mean, did Ottoman trade doesn't really get good until Imp, if we're being totally real, right? Like Abbasid trade gets good in feudal age.
Yeah, now, if the Abbasid player is playing very eco-heavy, the Ottomans do have a decent window in late feudal to do a lot of damage. But at the same time, the concern is that if that push stalls out, then you just end up losing the game. And let's not forget, this is match point here for Baltune. So I think one of the added elements going into game number 4 here with a match point on your opponent's side is that you might be a little bit more cautious taking risks. Because if you end up losing out on those risks, then you're just going to end up losing out on the set, and you'll be playing an elimination game next week.
Sorry, I clocked out when you said Ottoman feudal. I'm never convinced these days, man. I think it has to go to castle, and I'm wondering if you take too long, does the Abbasid just get too far ahead? I mean, I guess we're gonna find out. possibly the last game of the day here. I see those subs coming through. Keep them rolling in. You guys are absolute superstars. But it's time to stick our superstars on the stage. Wham! On the match point, 2-1. Baltune, if he gets that second point, we get blessed with more moving out. Pray for it. We need the chaos. We thrive in the chaos. But for now, it's time to get Woodwall.
Spawning in on the right side, it's going to be Wham in command of the Abbasid dynasty with the color red. And on the opposing side, a somewhat unconventional civilization here for Baltune. He's going to be using the Ottomans with the color yellow. So, KP, there is definitely potential to trade, but there's also potential for some early aggression. If there is going to be any of that, though, that has to come from Baltune, you feel?
Yeah, it's tough because like by the time you get there with the spearmen, there's not much you can block out that is meaningful in my opinion, because military wing will not be too far behind. Like I actually think sometimes people just kind of overvalue the initial spear harass. Like actually a lot of the times it's better to just use those initial spears to push in the deer. And the cool thing about pushing those deer is if you do that, then you can definitely afford to go for the Sultani trade network, right? Because you have 2.4k extra food underneath your TC. So we'll see if Baltune wants to go for that. I believe stone has not been touched extra, so like, maybe we should be seeing the military score, but considering there's no one on wood yet, it looks like we're just going to get a fast feudal.
I kind of like that. I think one thing that Baltune could think about is getting early military schools going in Feudal Age if this game is a little passive at the beginning. Because one thing that's often kind of talked about with the Ottomans is that they build up power over time. So the sooner you get your military schools down, the sooner you will start building up that force. And especially if this game is very passive at the beginning, you're going to leverage that passive military production quite a bit.
Yeah, I feel like the fuel escalation is underwhelming, though. The only real value in military school there is those opening spears for the deer shove. And the other element that's quite valuable is it gets you close to the next vizier point, right? Like, outside that, you know, I think I've seen a lot of games where military school almost just feels pointless. Like, players are just doing it because they're going through motions. Like, you'll see them build a spear, they'll go stab a villager on gold, and then they'll go home. It's like, gold flaps all around. We did hurt him. Eventually, he'll die, right? But, like, you didn't push the deer in. At that point, the scout blocked you out. Looks like instead, you know, we're going to have a bit more of a standard build for Baltune, actually. No trade. You sure? Yeah, I'm about to say, we better rewind that and run it back, my friend. Sultani Trade Network on the way. This is becoming quickly the new go-to build for a lot of Ottoman players. I think Louis MT was actually one of the first players to do this. So it was a Sultani Trade Network 2TC Fast Castle, and then gradually you trend into Imp. Now, where it gets interesting, I wonder if he'll actually do it. I know Louis' build actually involves going for the Seagate Castle, which is unheard of with the Ottomans currently.
I mean, at the very beginning of competitive Ottomans, back when the DLC was released, I've actually seen a lot of Seagate castles, especially in team games. But yeah, ever since then, it has been a no-show basically in tournaments.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because ever since the change, you have to remember Sultani Trade Network got changed so that you actually get less gold slightly from each trader, but you can now stockpile more traders inside the landmark. And if you stockpile them inside the landmark, they actually give some gold, which is very safe, right? It's just passive gold trickle at home. Where it got really cool is the increase in value. I think with trade bags, it went from something like 340 to 420 when you're loaded out inside that landmark. But like on a map like this, your end goal should be to long distance trade, right? Like that's the way it's set up. In fact, he even has a very desirable route on the right side because he has got the trade post close to his side. So Wham, I mean, Eco Wing versus Trade Wing. So I remember going through this before because like you can actually kind of dissect this within the Abbasid order itself, which is that Military Wing was really good at stopping Trade Wing. Trade Wing was really good at stopping Eco Wing, and Eco Wing was really good at stopping Military Wing. So with that in mind, does that mean that like if Ottomans kind of play a weird Trade Wing, is it as good? No. I mean, it can't
I don't think so. Like, the concern I feel for the Abbasids is that they are not traditionally a civilization that can finish games quickly. It's not going to be a setup where you can go like super aggro all in and finish the game.
Yeah.
And if you don't do that, those military schools that Baltune is already building, those are going to start building up troops, and you're just going to stall out. So I'm not sure about this. This seems like a classic 2TC build here for Wham. He's mining stone, but Here's the thing, KP. We talk about this millions of times. 2DC builds are generally beaten by trade builds.
Yeah, that's where the eco wing gets kind of interesting, right? It's like it actually makes it tighter. But I'm saying like in the Abbasid mirrors, trade wing beats eco wing because it inflates so much quicker. But like this isn't an Abbasid trade wing. We haven't got Spice Roads, right? Like you're not actually getting an insane increase in rates. And I think trade bags, is it not? It's a tier 3 Vizier point, right? So you're not getting trade bags anytime soon, which is the 40% increased gold gathering. It's like your trade is kind of underwhelming. I think he's still going to have to go second TC.
Yeah, I don't know, but I feel like if he's doing that, I'm thinking more of a semi-fast castle approach for Baltune. Because let's not forget, we could also see this setup where he's just using the trade as a bait. He has seen the second TC from Wham, and he's also seen that Wham is now building production buildings as a potential response to trade. Although I'm not sure if Wham actually spotted the landmark.
By the way, just got confirmation. Vizier point tier 2 for the trade backs. But like that's still quite deep in the game for that to kick in, right? So, I mean, Supply coming out, but Wham already has the spin reaction. It's a fairly safe second TC. I thought maybe he'd try for a second one on the tree line, but this probably feels a lot easier to connect with and defend. Does also secure enough food to start inflating those spear counts. And double
Look at that.
range.
I love that.
So wait, did he built the blacksmiths at home though, right? Like that's kind of the funky thing with this build is like it's why Ottoman's proxy bases always look weird on land maps. Is like you're gonna have splintered production.
This is gonna be dangerous for Wham because Wham is in the base of Baltune right now, and Sipahi could chase down that scout. Wham is gonna have zero information about the proxy base.
He could have actually pinched that scout right there between the lumber camp. I'm a little bit surprised. I mean, Baltune's usually quick on the fingers, those reactions. But yeah, dude, what is it with this map and proxy base? Like, was Baltune just watching Recon earlier? He's like, I'm inspired.
Maybe he was. Like, we often downplay that, but many of the players actually look at the games and, that is such a big brain move by Baltune. He started building an archery range back at home, I'm pretty sure, because he was like, okay, I'm making Sipahi, and my opponent needs to believe that I'm going to build archers to deal with the spearmen. So I'm going to start building a range back at home, but when the scout leaves, I cancel it. I get a full refund, so it doesn't get surprised about, or I, in general, don't reveal the fact that I have ranges elsewhere.
The wildness is like Wham may not have expected this because he would have went in the base and seen no wheelbarrow as well, right? Like players at this level are checking those type of details. Like what kind of savage walks 2 villages across the map pre 7 minutes without wheelbarrow, right? There is only one kind of savage, my friends. Raid coming in. I mean, the villagers can defend this against a horseman, easy peasy. Spahi should be able to guard it. More spearmen now on the way to try and buffer this. So that's one weakness about him right now. All of his archers are not here, but they are killing.
They are, and I love the patience of Baltune. He only showed up when he had a meter around and he had like 6 or 7 archers. He's killed 2 villagers and he has managed to push those berries. This is a mass migration now from Wham, and don't forget, it's not that big of an effort from Baltune to just build a range back at home and start getting some archers out, because right now Wham is going to have to defend against this, and that's going to be challenging to do.
Yeah, and cool detail is he went for the meta point. Remember that meta gives you a movement speed advantage when you're in formation. That's how he's getting in so quick, and that's why Wham's reactions seem slow. Like, these archers are basically moving like Yumi.
And they're picking off so many vills here, KP. 6 villagers down. Villager count is dead even between the 2 players. And don't forget, Baltune is getting a lot of free production from those military schools.
Yeah, and also he's getting gold trickle from the trade. So that's allowing him to get into blacksmith upgrades. He's already got steeled arrow. A little bit surprised wheelbarrow didn't take a high priority, but it's all about the archer pump, right? Like, the weakness of what Wham's done here is because he didn't go for melee wing, he doesn't have boot camp. He doesn't even have composite bows to look forward to if he goes castle. Like, his archers are in no way better than the Ottomans. In fact, they are worse.
And that wood line is just a death trap right now for Wham. Side note, he's got 2 lumber camps. Both of them are on the wood lines on the right side. So it's not like he went to a backup wood line. You can actually see he chopped the northern tree line, and then he started chopping this tree line close to the TC. So he never actually ventured up until this point to this very south wood line. He lost a lot of villagers, lumberjacks those were.
Yeah, but Baltune has to die between the 2 TCs, right? So, like, I think he's going to try to run to the south one. Yeah, because it's not garrisoned yet. Unfortunately, Wham kept enough nearby. He's going to start diving through. Army's way too big to contest. And look at that idle time. Run, little villagers, run.
And remember, with the Matter, you move quicker, so you can actually run past that DC very, very quickly. Matter does take...
Lol.
That's a lot of damage, but, I mean, Baltune has to be happy.
Yeah, but
I would dare to say that if he loses that Matter, he would still be all right.
Yeah, but I mean, how does he keep it alive, dude? The size of the brain on this guy. I said going this Baltune is a name that people should put credence on. However, Wham, still respectable at all times, right? Free villager pincher coming in with the Matt Spearman. Not something you see too often.
That's gonna hurt for Baltune, though, especially because his reinforcements are now getting intercepted. And at the end of the day, Wham still has the eco lead because most of the villager kills that Baltune got, that was offset by that quick raid by Wham.
Also, another interesting detail here, though, is the blacksmith situation. Like, Wham is struggling because of that. He needs to get blacksmith techs. It's a huge advantage now. Steeled Arrow and Undermesh, you're trying to play into archers as a losing battle. The horseman cannot carry you against upgraded archers like this. So if we don't see a blacksmith drop soon, he's going to be in trouble. Like he read my mind. So, supply. I actually love to see Baltune like add in a stables on the forward side here, actually. Just kind of ramp up production of Cav. Outpost in the meantime. It's so hard against these metas. They're so quick to get in. The villagers, the panic build-up here is going to cost him dearly.
Oh my lord. That's a lot of villager casualties, though. Once again, swinging in the favor of Baltune. And it's not just the casualties, it's the idle time as well.
I mean, every single time you see Wham build an eco lead, Baltune's like, time for a Cullen. Could we see a game number 5 to close out the second day of the group stage? It's starting to feel that way. Wham, he's at least getting a bit of breathing room to get some horsemen in. We have now got Steeled Arrow on the way, but the meta is still a difficult detail. These guys have been doing the hard work. If it wasn't for this raid force for Wham, this game would already be over.
Oh, certainly. Like, this is the only thing that's keeping Wham in this game. And, you know, KP, no matter what the outcome of this series, one thing is sure. Even if Baltune ends up losing this set, he is going to be a dangerous foe next week. So, like, this group is really stacked, man, because Baltune is definitely playing at a very high level, although right now he's having problems of his own. Right now, 0 food per minute for him, for instance. That's definitely not something that he's happy about. But it's not like Wham's eco is a lot more intact either.
He has got the double outpost, right? That's what delayed him. And the deer is kind of deceptive. Like, he could have been a bit more optimal in dropping off early to make sure he can build some units, but should be fixed soon. In the meantime, Wham, it's still a quality difference here, right? And you have to consider Vizier points that get added in over time can give other quirky little advantages here. I wouldn't be surprised if we're looking at maybe an extra military school as a priority soon.
Yeah, he kind of needs to do that, as looks like his hunters will be discovered. He's a little slow to react, but he does have 2 towers nearby, and towers will be enough to push this away.
It's crazy, actually, how little losses Baltune would have occurred, if he had Wheelbarrow this whole time. Like, I don't know if it's an oversight in the build at this stage, or if it's just an accepted issue, a sacrifice you have to make.
He's rarely picking any gold, so I feel like this is just an almost all-in style commitment to that military production. So I think part of the equation here for him is that he simply said, listen, I'm not going to mine gold. I'm just going to mass-produce units, so I can't really afford a wheelbarrow right now.
So, Wham. Archer mass is almost equal now to Baltune's, but like long-term wood is a question mark here. You know, Baltune is definitely struggling in that department as well due to that raid force on the backside. Still reluctant to send anything back to deal with that. And, you know, that's where the numbers are deceptive here, right? Like, actually, Baltune has like a 10 military lead when it comes to Wham's base, right? And meanwhile, the outpost, the thing that is slowly killing off this raid force that Wham had.
Yeah, the horseman is gone, so the spears should not be able to do much against this. Now, Wham almost depleted these small wood lines that he had, and Baltune is now building a ram, or he will be soon building a ram with siege engineering coming in. And I think Baltune was trying to play wood denial. He's probed this central area over and over again to see if his opponent is chopping trees there. And now I think he's realizing that those wood lines are depleted. He's going to try to just pinch to the south, hit the other wood line. Gotta credit Wham, though, because he's been avoiding this aggression for the last few minutes, and he's slowly built up a villager lead. Now he's up by 10 eco.
Yeah, and these raids are still annoying, right? Like, he needs a lot of wood because he just went siege engineering. Great little micro bat there, but he's still not finishing those spears. So if he gets idled out again, like, it kind of sacrifices something, right? Like, you either lose archer lead or you end up losing ram production.
Still, you do have the military schools working for you, so some of that eco difference is being offset. And I don't like how we're still losing villagers to just 1 or 2 spears over here. Please don't lose a villager to the scout. That would be very embarrassing.
We got a little bit of time. Focus on the ramp. I'm sure nothing ugly is going to happen back there. See, like, it's absolutely fine.
There we go.
So, outpost now being assaulted. That's the secondary TC, remember, so not that healthy. Second round would go a long way here for Baltune, but he's falling behind on archer count now.
What I would love to see is a couple of Sipahi being sent to the left, though. Because both of the berry patches that Wham had initially, they are on the right side. They're being denied right now. He's able to take food because he's taking the hunt to the left and the berries to the left. If Baltune sends a couple of Sipahi that way, that could be devastating for Wham.
So the idea here is to shoot so much wood at the wood that it can't move and gives up on life. Totally makes sense. Yeah, Archer's able to rain that down. That's why I was expecting maybe like a double ram, because then you can commit onto the TC and you can kind of justify diving, right? But like with 1 ram, you just have to sit back and let us do its magic. I mean, right there, it's not a good trade, right? You lose 200 wood for 100 wood.
At this point, Baltune is staying long enough to see his opponent depleting all available wood, except for the one in the middle.
Oi, oi, oi. Village on the front line again. A little bit of a dive underneath the TC. I don't think we got ranged armor activated by the looks of that. Dying a little bit too quick on those Sipahi. Dive's going to come in. Notice the horsemen are not here for Wham, being held back in reserve.
Yeah, it's double matter as well.
Can't snipe that aura. Archer's moving in. This might be the point where it's actually worth switching over to the attack speed. I think he is actually sticking on the ranged armor, though. Final Sipahi about to flop down. Archer mass. Wham, barely having a lead here, but that attack speed aura, it should end up favoring Baltune.
He detached a couple of archers, though. He's hitting the wheels.
Oh.
He's hitting the wheels while all of this is happening, but Wham, he is fleeing. He did lose quite a few villagers, though. He lost 22 wheels overall, and he still keeps losing some. Look at the eco count, though. I feel like despite how suboptimal this fight was for Baltune, he managed to eco the ecos out.
Yep.
And with the meta buff, he can run away from this.
And he's still got more archers being annoying on the fort side, right? So, like, the other thing is, with that meta, he'll always get away. It's just wasted time. And if Wham ever has to pull more archers to chase that down, which she'll always have to do, it's an opportunity. The only problem here is Baltune needs an extra meta for the second wave.
Yeah, slowly but surely, Wham is
kidding
leveraging that eco lead he had. So, like, you definitely feel like Baltune's push is stalling out a little.
It's actually crazy the way he's just keeping right on the edge of distance here. Bit greedy, the commitment in there from Baltune. If he just said duck it in the end, decides to commit in with the archers. An ambitious fight, considering he had to clean out.
I don't like this for Baltune.
Was that a misclick?
I don't know. Like, maybe he stopped unintentionally. Maybe he was looking to fight. He was holding the Matter all the way at the back, but I think once he saw the archers diving
no, the
on the
villagers!
Matter...
Oh, the Sipahi! Wow!
This is what he needed. This is exactly what he needed.
Fortitude goes hard here. 4 Sipahi get in. More eco damage done. Now, it's still an 8 eco lead for Wham, but the wood is becoming an issue. If you check that backline, he's about to expire there, right? So he needs to win on the forward side. The good news is Baltune just threw away a critical mass of archers at a critical point.
Yeah, agreed. If Baltune still had most of his archers intact on the left side, I would say he's in a decent position now. But his archer count is just miserable. It's 23 against 50 on the field. And I don't see him queuing more archers. He might just be hard switching into Sipahi at this point. And that might actually work, because let's not forget, Wham is still being raided on the left side on the food, and Wham now needs to move onto the wood in the middle.
Wham really needs a camel archer at this point. They're kind of underrated in these situations. It used to be very popular in the Bassin Mirrors, like you just build 1 camel archer to debuff the entire horseman battalion. Kind of similar here, right? Like, definitely runs risk against Sipahi, but when the archer lead is this big, it's how you protect yourself, because horsemen will never beat Sipahi.
Yeah, those Sipahi could be dangerous. It's 57 archers, but Sipahi count is increasing for Baltune. Baltune needs to be patient, though. He can't pull the trigger too soon, otherwise he's just going to get all of his Sipahi butchered by a mass of archers.
He goes in anyway. Fortitude has been activated quite early here. No meta on the front side. 2 more just got pumped, but they're not here yet. And the Sipahi definitely are getting the trades in, but dying fast. On the other side of this, archers get pinched out by the horsemen.
I think he tried to use this as a distraction to hit the berries on the other side, but he found no villagers. Instead, he ran into horsemen, and he's going to tap out.
Whew, Baltune, one of the few players I might trust with the Ottomans in his hands, but unfortunately, just one slip up, one mistake is all it takes to fall victim to the Canadian and lose out 3-1.
Gotta credit Wham for his resilience, though. He was under so much pressure here, but he kept his composure. And Baltune was never really able to truly cut into that eco advantage that he had. In fact, if you think about it, Wham was actually able to hit his opponent's eco as well with just a handful of spears and horsemen. Baltune has shown some very cool things, though, today, KP. I feel like the scoreline doesn't do him justice. It's 3-1, but all of these games were super competitive. Maybe except for the Islands one, but really, Baltune has shown a lot of good things. And I think he's going to be a dangerous player to play against in the elimination matches next week.
Yeah, man. I mean, like, what? Imagine the map 5 as well. We would have had probably Chinese versus Malians, kind of a spicy idea there, but we don't quite get that far. Crazy how close Baltune had it in both game 3 as well as game 4 here, right? Against Wham, who most people would easily put top 6 in the entirety of AOE 4 right now. He's that much on fire. But can't fault the Canadian, man. Perfect performance in the end in that game to recover a very uncomfortable position up against the Ottomans. But love the creativity, man. I'm always a fan of seeing a way the Ottomans can play Feudal Age because that feels like the area of the game where they look completely worthless right now.